All right. Well, Ashley, how are you doing, sir?
Doing very well, thank you.
Definitely. Well, it's great to see you today. Thanks so much for having me at the conference. I really
Of course,
appreciate it.
we're glad
Last
to
minute
have
sub
you.
in?
Last minute sub, actually, for my wife.
Really? No way. Oh my God.
So my wife works in the insurance industry.
Nice.
And she was going to do an AI presentation on some how to use it for training material.
That's awesome.
And that sort of
Okay.
thing. She was told 2 weeks ago she had to leave to go to New York City today,
my God.
and then they ended up canceling last
course
minute.
they
But
do.
we
Of course
had
they
already
do.
scheduled you, so it worked out well. Yeah.
Good deal. Well, I'm sorry. I know I was probably not as pretty of a presenter as she would have been.
Right,
You know?
absolutely,
I can't claim that at all.
Yeah,
That's great. That's great. Well, Ashley, do you mind giving us just a brief bio of some of the big ideas you're interested in?
Yeah, so I wear a couple of hats in the assessment industry. The one I'm probably most proud of is for the Georgia Association of Assessing Officials. I'm the executive director.
Nice.
Have been in that position for January will be 6 years.
Nice.
Before that, I had rose through the ranks of the executive board.
Cool.
Becoming president, was getting ready to roll off the board as past president, and my predecessor was having some health issues, so he retired from the position.
Nice.
I took over. But I've been in the assessment industry since I was 21.
That's awesome.
Started out in my home county of Catoosa,
Nice.
in Georgia. Just as we're called the gateway to Georgia, because as soon as if you're going down 75 and you cross into
Nice.
Georgia out of Tennessee, you're in Catoosa County. 75 kind of splits us in half. And so I worked some other jurisdictions as a chief appraiser, and then in April of 2023, I accepted the position of chief appraiser back in my home county again. So it kind of came full circle.
That's awesome.
So yeah.
And is that close to Chickamauga?
It is close to Chickamauga.
Very cool.
Part of the Chickamauga battlefield is in Catoosa County, and part of it's in Walker County.
Super cool.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The actual city of Chickamauga is in Walker County.
Yeah, I'd love to visit that battlefield. I think people do not remember that. You remember Gettysburg, you remember Antietam, you remember
Absolutely.
Bull Run, all this stuff, but you do not remember. Nobody, but it's huge. It's huge.
It's a huge battlefield, and there's really multi-parts of it. Lookout Mountain in Walker County, Georgia, and Hamilton County, Tennessee. It's also a big part of the whole, what they call the Chattanooga campaign.
Right.
I know we were speaking earlier about, I guess we're both history buffs.
Yes, absolutely.
So if you don't know much about the Battle of Chickamauga, I encourage people to read up on it. It's very interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah, this wasn't it the first use of the Spencer repeating rifle?
So that is right. Colonel Wilder, he was a Union colonel. There's actually a huge monument on the battlefield
Really cool
in
to
his
check out.
honor. It's a tower that you can walk up into. But yeah, so Wilder he financed Spencer's for his
that's right. He
entire
bought them
unit.
himself. I forgot
He
that.
bought
It's like
them,
it's even
and
crazier than I forgot.
He had a payment plan set up with his soldiers.
Right.
So yeah, it was he was an innovative guy.
That's amazing.
If you read up on the Civil War history and repeating rifles, a lot of the old top brass of the Union didn't believe in it. They thought their men would waste ammo by being able to fire so quickly. So that's of course something that's just such a crazy concept to us now.
Yeah. It's interesting how these echoes of technology and how they get adopted. It never seems to end.
Yeah, exactly.
We're still at the same kind of thing. That's awesome. So you got started at 21, and you've worked with the state as well. Is that right?
I did work for about 3 years with the Georgia Department of Audits and Accounts. And in the state of Georgia, we have two oversight agencies over the assessment industry. One being, of course, Department of Revenue.
Right.
They're the education and, for lack of a better term, enforcement arm.
Right.
Whereas audits is very neutral. They just come in, they look at your data,
just take care of stuff.
They do your ratio studies, and and the findings are the findings, right? And then if Revenue Department has to take any action for being out of compliance, that's how that process works.
Gosh, I guess they go take care of that.
Exactly.
That's cool. That makes sense. Ratio study standards. Do y'all test for vertical equity in Georgia?
We do with the PRD.
Nice. You run PRD. Nice. Very cool. have you read the new ratio study standard? It just came out.
I haven't looked into it yet.
Drafted.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I'm anxious to look at that and see what kind of changes have come.
They got a new vertical equity indicator.
Well, I know there is the new number is the PRB. Is that right?
So they've had PRB as an option, but they added this. It's called the vertical equity indicator.
Okay.
Which runs it's pretty interesting. We're checking it out.
I definitely want to check it out because everybody gets so focused on your median ratio.
Oh,
right?
I know.
But your vertical bias, that's where it gets challenging.
Yes.
Specifically like most jurisdictions, you've got such a huge diversity of properties.
Yes.
Especially specifically in residential.
Right. Oh yeah.
In my jurisdiction, we've got an area with old mill houses, right, that date back to the 20s and 30s,
right,
all the way up to mansions,
right,
multi-million-dollar properties, and everything in between. So yeah, chasing that vertical equity is challenging.
It is. It's challenging. I remember I was talking to the American Budget Academics Association. I got invited out to talk on property tax, and it was really interesting because one of the academics, at the end of the presentation, is like, "Hey, just a huge mystery to me. Like, what's going on with vertical equity? Like, we've been researching it. We don't understand. Like, why there seems to be it's a lot of regressivity. Like, what's going on there?" And I was like, "Guys, it's pretty simple. It's like there aren't that many sales on the high end.
Yeah,
there's a lot more variability on the high end. There's a lot more variability on the high end.
Absolutely.
There's not many sales as people appeal a lot. I mean, it's like pretty simple mechanical reasons why it exists. But for people new to the industry who don't know what vertical equity is, because I run into this fairly frequently. Can you describe just what it is and how do you explain it to taxpayers or people who don't
when I explain it to a taxpayer or say other government officials outside the assessment industry, because of course you get questioned a lot by your governing authority, your city councils, and all of that. So I explain in very simple North Georgia language: Are you giving a break to the wealthier people, or are you giving a break to the poorer people?
Exactly.
Very simple terms, right? Of course, we know there's a whole lot more to it. But when you explain it that way to someone, they can say, "Okay, am I overvaluing? Am I overvaluing the lower end properties while undervaluing the higher end, or the opposite?
Vice versa. Makes sense.
Or am I treating everybody exactly the same, and we're completely neutral?"
That's right.
Of course, that's where we want to be, but as I said, that's very challenging. Probably, to me, the most challenging statistic.
I think it is the most challenging statistic, and I think it's. Are there any other reasons you see it? Those seem to be the big ones to me. It's there's just less sales and there's more variability on the high end, and that purely it's just more difficult to appraise.
Yeah, a higher end home is certainly more difficult to appraise, and at least in the state of Georgia, and I know this is common everywhere, we're at a big disadvantage because we typically only review the outside of the home. And in higher end homes, there's things that are in there that you just don't know about. They typically might have, a lot of times 2 kitchens, 3 kitchens, or appliances that are very high end, and it's just it's going to make us undervalue those properties because you just don't know. And a lot of craftsmanship that that's hard to quantify.
It's very hard to quantify. Exactly.
I'll give you an example of a home, a custom-built home in North Georgia that was built. It was one of those projects the guy took 3 or 4 years to build. He had these windows. It's a very rustic Montana lodge type place. He had these massive windows on one end of the home, massive in the gables of the home. Right. So to get these windows built, he had to, once they were custom built in Michigan, he has to send his builder to Michigan to build a platform on a flatbed truck.
Oh my God!
To transport them. So those kind of situations. Of course, that's not the norm, but suffice it to say, us as assessment professionals, we're never going to capture that value.
Exactly. It's very difficult. Very difficult to do. It makes sense. Yeah, it's just a real challenge. What do you find is the best kind of mitigation like to deal with that? Is it just spending more time looking at the high end stuff? Is it
more time going outside of your jurisdiction, looking looking at similar sales that may close your region of the state, but maybe not in your county because like we've said, there's just not that many
sales. Yeah. Makes sense. Cool. So you spent some time with the ratio studies. Any interesting findings, like working in the field with ratio studies, running appraisals, things like that?
I will say, and having specifically back in my time with the audit department and my time with GAAO, I think one thing that people don't focus enough on time on, and I mentioned it in your presentation earlier, that I'm a sales qualification nerd, right?
Yes.
I analyze sales, and I think a lot of folks, they miss that piece.
Yes.
They just do a quick cursory look as those deeds are coming in, those transfers are coming in, they say, okay, yep, that's qualified, unqualified. Just look at it super quick, and they never go back with a fine-tooth comb and really dig into that sales data. So I think that's, to me, that's the big one, right? Because you want to make sure the sample that you're using for your ratio study, everything is qualified.
That's right. Because your training data, it's like your training data is messed up. It's like exactly. It doesn't matter what model you use, like it just costs, like whatever. It's like your training data's bad, you're in trouble.
Absolutely,
Definitely. That makes a lot of sense. What are best practices you have found in sales validation? Like what is what people most commonly miss, you see?
I think really the big one, the easiest one to find is you don't know it's an adjacent parcel owner, right? That's to me, that's the easiest one. But I think people look for those same last names, right? Smith selling to Smith. But they don't get on the map and click around. So, Smith bought from Jones. Well, Smith owns 3 parcels surrounding it. That's why he bought it. So, so I think that's a very simple thing. All it takes is a little more time. Right. You just
check. If
you have to open up your GIS or your website or whatever you've got and click around. Right.
Yes.
If there's some kind of issue with that sale, if you've got a crazy ratio there.
Right. Exactly.
That's what I would always advise your first thing. Pull up the map, click around.
Definitely.
It'll take you 30 seconds. Right?
Exactly.
And if you see adjoining owner, kick it out. Right.
Yep. Get rid of it. Yeah, that's a really good insight you mentioned too, buried in that we have found, and it sounds like you found this like core insight, which is like, well, if you run your model and you get a really weird ratio, they're actually it doesn't matter if you run a cost, you run a regression model, like that's actually a pretty good signal that's maybe there's something weird with that sale if you've got most of the sales right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like and you should go like do some digging, like, well, the characteristics wrong, or like, was it not valid? Like you oftentimes will find stuff, and then you clean that up, you clean up your whole training data set.
Absolutely.
That's cool. Awesome. That's really good insight on sales validation. On the ratio study piece, so it sounds like, again, like I think you're absolutely right. People spend so much time on the median ratio, the vertical equity piece. What else have you found really hard to explain to just people?
I think, of course, if you say the word coefficient of dispersion.
You say coefficient, everybody's like, you see the eyes close over.
Absolutely. Right? Anybody outside of the assessment industry,
right.
They're gonna shut you off immediately. So when I'm speaking with a taxpayer, or like I mentioned earlier with our elected officials, whoever, I don't even use the term. Right. I just I just say our measure of uniformity, and then I kind of explain to them how it works.
Right.
How far off on average are you from the median ratio? And people can follow that a little more, because like I say, when you said you use the word coefficient, you lost
immediately. I think that's such a good point. And this is actually my biggest beef with ratio study standards generally, and that ratio study. It's that, when you read the standard and you're looking at it and you're like, oh my God, it's like, we're going to price related differential. We're going to we've got this regression coefficient. We're like, doing all this crazy stuff, and it's not like these things aren't that complicated, but they are they're quite opaque.
Yeah, right.
They're very it's like, okay, like what are we actually doing? Like in the COD, it's like we are measuring the uniformity.
Yeah, right.
Okay, like I think there should be more work done, in particular on so there's the technical aspect, which is very important, and we have great technical experts in the industry that write this stuff and spend a lot of time researching it, and they come up with good metrics. That's good. But it's like, we need very simple ways to explain this to people, because even I go in a lot of offices and boards, and a lot of times it's like, well, I've got to explain how these metrics work.
Explaining how they work, why it's good or bad,
and why it matters.
Right.
Why it matters.
Yeah,
yes.
Because we're all guilty. Our staffs are guilty of this. Yeah, when a statistical analysis is bad. You know when your COD is bad, but why is it bad?
Why is it bad? Why does it matter?
Yeah, exactly. Why does it matter? So what are we going to do? How are you going to break it down further to explain why it's bad? Right?
Exactly.
Is just your whole jurisdiction bad, or most likely it's one hot pocket of
it's one
area,
hot pocket problem area.
And once you fix that, everything else smooths out.
Exactly. Yeah, going back to, maybe this is a little technical, but the thing that's interesting about COD to me, because it is the average absolute deviation of the median, averages are blown out. Like, you have one, let's say you've got one sale in there, it was actually $1, you let the $1 sale through, you got 100,000 ratio on it, or something. It's like blows your COD out. Like,
exactly. Just a couple of those numbers can completely. Once you run that initial ratio study and you see that, we've done all this work. What's going on?
Don't freak out quite yet. Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah, that ties right back into, like I was saying earlier, sales qualification and making sure you go through those sales with a fine-tooth comb. And don't just do that cursory review.
Exactly.
Because
it'll bite you.
The issue compounds.
It compounds over time. Yeah, that's right. No, I think this is a really, really good point, and I think this transitions well. We want to talk a little bit about homestead exemptions, law changes. Recently I had the chance to meet a big gubernatorial candidate in a big state in the Midwest. They're thinking about, first they're like, well, we want to get rid of property tax.
Right. That's always the hot button. We're just going to get rid of it. Okay. Well, how are we going to get rid of it?
The car they called, it's like the dog that called the car. It's like, how are we going to pay? Things have to be paid for.
Right.
And nobody likes that, but we do have to pay, and we have all these good services that come out of it. And a lot of his argument was around, well, these assessments are bad. And it's like, well, that's one portion of it. And then he started thinking about assessment caps, started thinking about homestead exemptions.
Right.
And, I have this sense, and the thing I realized, and I'm glad you're like an executive director and you're thinking about these things, is that really when you think about a lot about like, I was talking to this candidate about it, and the thing I realized was, and he even said some things to this effect, when you look at property tax policy, it's like, who do you go to? Who is calling you and be like, hey, this is that is really interested in the public good, interested in okay, what's best for our communities, who understands technically what's going on.
Right.
This stuff is pretty complex, and hey, but it's not that complex if it's messaged correctly. You can actually get people to get in their heads, not maybe the metrics, but you can get it in their heads what's going on. But there does seem to be this gap where IAAO does not do any lobbying.
Right.
There's not Lincoln. They've got good experts over there. We've got some people thinking about this stuff, but there's not one source where if I'm a policymaker, I'm I don't know what to do. Really, I'm a staffer, right? I'm a state leg staffer. I'm a new college guy, straight out of school. I'm literally writing this policy. It's who do I call? It's I don't know. And that seems like a big problem, but it seems like you've done some work on this. What are the best practices there, and how do you message that to?
First off, our association, we work very closely with the County Commissioners Association.
Nice.
Right. So we have a legislative liaison, director of legislative affairs is actually the title. It's a gentleman named James Stokes out of Paulding County. So he goes to the Capitol on a very regular basis. Awesome. He's been down there a lot the last 2 years.
Right.
The last 2 years have been really, really big regarding assessment-related legislation. So we built those relationships. People at the Capitol know James Stokes is an expert. He's going to shoot you straight when you ask him a question. If you propose this change, he's going to be able to tell you the repercussions that you may not have thought about. So developing those relationships is the biggest thing. So we, like I say, not only work closely at the Capitol, but we also work closely with Department of Revenue.
Nice.
So it's a big network.
That's cool.
And of course, like in any state, the legislators, if they want to change, it's going to change, right? There's going to be a change, and that's what we've dealt with the last couple of years. And some of the initial proposals were
a little wacky,
a little bit radical. Would have had some really major repercussions.
Right.
But we were able to advise legislators and say, hey, why don't we look at this and look at that and take a step back, and again, working very closely with ACCG, which is the Association of County Commissioners of Georgia. They have a lot of input at the Capitol, of course, because it affects local government. None of our property tax revenues in the state of Georgia go to the state level whatsoever. Gotcha. It's all local.
It's all local.
So it's all county, city, and schools.
Gotcha.
So it could be interesting that the state wants to make major changes on a revenue stream that doesn't affect them. Right?
Yes, exactly.
It only affects locally.
Right.
So that's why that big network is important.
Right.
To advise and hopefully not get bad legislation.
Definitely. Makes sense. And you had a big move in the homestead exemption.
We had a big move. This was directly related to what the real estate market has done over the last 5 years. Georgia is no different. There's jurisdictions that saw 25, 30% increases yearly.
Right.
Not just in sales values, not just the real estate market, in assessment value.
Right.
Just to keep up, right? Because we don't have a standard set by the state of revaluing every so many years. We reval every year.
Right.
In a market like we've had, you're going to have to, or you're going to be so far behind, and you're doubling people's values and that kind of thing. So that was reaction to those values going up. So they implemented what's you'll hear around Georgia. Everybody says 581. 581. That refers to House Bill 581, which was the legislation introduced and passed last year, in 2024. So it created for homesteaded properties what's called a floating homestead exemption. I know a lot of states have similar things. It was kind of sold to the public as a property tax freeze, which we know there's really no such thing as that.
Yes.
But basically how it works is everyone has a base value based on the 2024 assessment. That value can only go up a certain percentage, which will be mandated by the revenue commissioner. That's the department head of the Department of Revenue, appointed by the governor. So the revenue commissioner will make the determination what that inflationary increase can be in a year.
Gotcha.
And so the difference between that floating value and fair market value is an exemption, is an additional exemption on top of any exemptions that
you already have.
That owner would already have, whether it's in Georgia, local communities can lobby their state delegation to introduce homestead exemptions that are just local. In my jurisdiction of Catoosa, we have numerous local exemptions, both that affect your school portion, your county portion, and one of our cities has their own complete set of exemptions. So this new HB 581 floating exemption is on top of any of those. So it had much more of a major impact on our tax roll this year than I really anticipated. It made the exemption value really skyrocket, much more so than I thought. With an exemption like this, you think, and I actually erroneously told a lot of people this, it's not going to be a major impact until 5 or 10 years down the road. But the mechanisms, and given the still very hot real estate market in my jurisdiction, had much more of a major impact in 1 year than I anticipated.
Gotcha. Well, I'm curious, in Georgia, does the millage rate move when the values move?
It does, yeah. It's mandated that we perform a rollback calculation. So you're basically backing out your inflationary increases off of your tax digest, and that gives you a millage equivalent to remain revenue neutral compared to the prior year. That doesn't mean that the county and the schools and the cities has to adopt that rollback rate. If they choose to go above that rate, they have to have 3 public hearings, notification of a tax increase, and all that.
Okay. Do they often do that, or they?
It depends. In a lot of counties, each taxing authority may do something different. The county might accept the rollback, where a city has to increase. Last year, our school system had a major budget deficit, and they were forced to increase and not roll their rate back. So it's a mixed bag.
Gotcha. So, actually, my thought about all these homestead exemptions, caps, I personally am not a big fan of these. I think we can make arguments about elderly people and their homes and things.
Right.
Although you can do things like, it's like, okay, you just defer that until the property sells.
Yeah.
There's some things, my friend Ped, who's an academic at the University of Ulster, talks a lot about this, and he sets up ad valorem property tax systems all across the world. So he recently worked in Pakistan, all in Myanmar. Like he goes out there and he helps from the ground up.
Right.
And he's got this sense of like, look, at the end of the day, this is a distributional mechanism.
Yeah.
It's who's paying what, and so that always gets nasty because it's like who's paying what. But the good thing about property taxes, it's localized, and the way Ped describes it is like, well, let's say we're in Pakistan and we're all together, and right now you and I, we have to go buy bottled water and carry it in to our town outside of Lahore. We got to go do that. But if we all chipped in $1 a month, we could all dig a well.
Yeah, right.
And no one wants to pay the $1, but it's a lot less than the $20 we got to pay to go buy bottled water.
And I use an example with the school system. I know locally, with the school's budget divided by the amount of students they have, it's about $13,000 a year to educate a child in my community.
Yeah,
right.
That's what it costs.
That's a lot of money.
A lot of cash.
If I'm paying for my kid to go to school
down the
every
road,
year. Yeah, but you're right. But when everybody pulls, including commercial and industrial properties, and it's applied uniformly through the assessment process, it's a community pool.
Exactly.
Everybody's paying in.
Yeah, everybody's paying in. But I do worry, like, the homestead exemptions and things like that, they lead to like this really weird effects. And then you end up with like states like Prop 13 in California, where things get like super insane, where you've got like new people coming in. I wanted to move to San Francisco, and I was thinking about it, but then you're like, well, you can never buy a house. You essentially cannot buy a house.
Yeah, you can't.
Because if you're there, you're paying $500 a year in property tax because this has been deeded from your family down since the 80s. But you buy a new house, you're paying $30,000 a year in property tax.
Yeah. So an example of that in California that I've seen, IAAO did a help with some consulting. I forget what state it was, but they basically wanted to model Prop 13. Right? They wanted a carbon copy.
Right.
Of it.
Let's do it.
And so they had a team. A good friend of mine who's passed away now. He was IAAO Board of Directors, Bobby Lee, shared this document with me, where in one subdivision, I can't remember exactly where in California it was, all the houses were cookie cutter, absolutely identical. They were all built in 1987.
Right.
They're all the exact same square footage. Everything's completely the same. Their assessments ranged from $250,000 to $2 million, because that is the repercussions of artificially influencing assessment, right? And not valuing according to sales, according to that local market.
Exactly.
So it blew my mind that it was that drastic.
Right. Incredibly drastic, and I worry, like, I think what people don't realize is this is going to have very real effects on American diamonism. Where if there's a very real chance. I've been very productive living in North Carolina, building this company there, but maybe I would be more productive, more access to capital if I lived in San Francisco and I'm hanging bumping elbows with these people all the time.
Right.
And functionally, that is not possible, and a lot of that is due to like Prop 13, where if I went in and tried to buy a house, well, the carrying costs are 20 times that of my neighbor. And so you limit the diamonism of this country.
Absolutely.
Like in a big way, and which has like these really, really long run effects. And I don't know what quite to do about that, but you just kind of worry about, and this is where I come back to assessment quality, where in a lot of the good work you're doing with the executive director, this is the executive director here, where a lot of what happened in California, if you look at the history of Prop 13, the assessments are all messed up. Yep. This guy named Howard Jarvis comes in, my arch nemesis. I'm named Will Jarvis. Family lineage. We get the devil and the angel here a little bit. Just all about perspective. But he comes in, this big public uprising, and this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to solve this. And then you end up with these really, really bad effects. I mean, there's no telling the actual economic negative impact of Prop 13. I would love to see a study of that, just on the reduction in dynamism, where people can't move out there that want to do these specific things.
Right, where it's having this much broader economic impact.
Exactly.
That was never imagined when it was put into place.
Exactly. And people can't conceptualize that. So, how do you feel about these exemptions? Are you generally, what do you think about them? Should we just have less? My sense is we just have less because there's also administrative burden. It's
absolutely. The administrative burden just on HB 581 has been tremendous, because you've got these separate values that you now have to track, and you've got to make sure, you've got to make sure they're calculating correctly.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
So in Georgia, another thing kind of makes us unique is about 140 plus or minus of our 159 counties all have the same CAMA system.
Nice.
It's a public-private partnership.
That's awesome.
Dates back to the 90s. So there's a team devoted to making sure any of this new legislation gets implemented correctly, and they work closely with counties to check and recheck and make sure. So that's a big benefit, but still, it's on you and your county to go into that CAMA system, make sure that value is calculating correctly, because it's, to complicate it further with this exemption, it's not just your house and your land equals this base value. It's your house up to 5 acres, unless you have what we call our conservation use.
Oh my God!
That changes
Got some
things.
bees on it,
Yes, right. So that changes the parameters. So it gets very complex to make sure it's calculating correctly.
Right.
So administrative cost, or administrative, burden has been tremendous for all of us. And that's a part that legislators probably don't imagine.
Right.
I know you probably ran into this in your career. People outside of the assessment industry, they always say, well, you just hit a button on a computer and it does it, right?
There's a lot in hitting a button.
You're right.
There's a lot that goes in hitting a button.
I've yet to find that button. I hope to find it
one day. Maybe AI will give us that button. It'll be great, superb.
Exactly.
Yes. I think that's a really good point. I really like this concept. I think about a lot, which is this concept of compounding error rates.
Right.
Particularly in what we do, where it's okay, so there's an error rate on the valuation side where it's this it's complicated to appraise in mass and do it well. It's very complicated.
Very complicated.
Sales validation, you got to pick up the right data, you got to run a good model, you got to make sure the model's right, you got all this stuff. There's huge complication with that. So there's an error rate built into that.
Exactly.
Even if you can get the error rate pretty low, but it's a lot of work and you get it down. And then you start multiplying it by, then we're going to take the value and we're going to do these things to it, and over 5 acres, and then you multiply error rates in each one of these.
Oh, absolutely.
And then in the more steps you add in that, the more likely there is to be a pretty major thing that happens every year.
Absolutely. Exactly. Just another complication that you don't think of on this particular piece of legislation, multi-houses on one parcel.
Right, how do you do with that?
Right, so what house are we calculating this base exemption off of? Are we going
improvement?
Do we just default to the most expensive home? What if they're, what if it's a family property and they're all, 4 or 5 houses are all kind of the same? What do you do there? And so that gets into having to track, okay, which person is claiming the exemption, which home do they live in? Sometimes that's go out of the parcel and check, right? There's no other way.
And how much time do you have to go do that on top of everything, right?
So like you say, it compounds if you're picking up the wrong home, or if our legislation, any accessory buildings are not supposed to be included in that base calculation, but you've got to got to make sure it's not, right? You've got to
Right.
go in and check and run routines to make sure it's not being pulled in. So yeah, it's very, very complicated. And kind of getting back to your earlier question, my opinion on exemptions, I think we can agree it's a fact if there were no exemptions, the average property tax burden goes down.
Right.
Right.
Yes,
There's
absolutely,
no other way
absolutely.
around.
Yeah.
But we, as a society, we deem that if
There's certain
if a
things.
person, if you're elderly,
Yes.
you paid into the system your entire life. At certain ages, you should get a break.
Yeah.
Local exemptions around Georgia typically start at 60 or 65.
Yeah.
They start pulling back, usually on school taxes.
Right.
So that's how it is in my county, starting at 65. Then at 75, they're completely exempt from school taxes.
Right.
There's no income qualification there, and there's no cap on how much of the assessment it could.
Exactly.
I joke it could be a billionaire living in a $1 billion home.
Right.
They pay zero school taxes. So and that's not unique among counties in Georgia. But say all that to say, we deem it's the people at a certain age should get a break. So I get that. I think it would be a monumental task in the state of Georgia, but I think a completely revamping of the homestead exemption and making it uniform across all communities.
Yes.
Sort of a hitting the reset button.
Right.
I think would be to me a better way to go about it.
Yes.
Again, that's such a monumental task because when we vote in a local exemption, that's a constitutional amendment for that location. So that creates major legal hills that have to be surmounted. So that's why it's pretty much unlikely that would ever happen.
Exactly. No, it's really interesting, and it's kind of it's one of these things that makes you bearish a little bit, and just really it frustrates me, and I just think where you've got the system where you can have these really small interest groups who can at the local level, it's fairly straightforward. You buy a couple fire trucks. The example I always give of this, my brother works makes Ozempic for Novo Nordisk in North Carolina, and he's been trying to spin up this new production line, and he goes in and they're like, get all the permits ready to go, and then the town comes in and goes, hey, you can't build this here. We've got this weird, there's this very special insect that lives only in this place that we need to protect.
Right.
And really, they didn't care about the insect. They just wanted Novo Nordisk to buy a bunch of fire trucks. It's and I'm sitting here and I wonder with that too, with exemptions, where it's at the very local level, you can get in there and start messing with stuff, and you can shift the burden around. It's small, but it does have real impact on we're dealing this profession we deal with, as my friend Luke says, who's a researcher in the Netherlands on property tax. We're dealing with the distribution of wealth. This is a pretty big deal. This is
absolutely
pretty important, and you get weird stuff, and it's not good. It degrades everything.
It does, absolutely. You're right. It's no different in Georgia that certain groups, special interest, certainly have their hand in how the exemption process works and how the assessment process in general works as well.
Definitely, it makes sense. I'm curious. So moving back a little bit, so you've been in the profession for quite a while. How have you seen this kind of technology shift over the years?
So that's such a major progression of just continually climbing up the hill, right? Just continually. Little things that just little everyday things that would have blown my mind 24 years ago. The example I'll use, and again, this is so simple, but when I go to my assessor's office website and I pull up the map, I hit the location button, and boom, that blue dot pops up. That's where I am, right? That's where I am.
That's really cool.
I'm looking at my layers, right? I know
right there.
I know the owner. I know the parcel number, all that.
Really cool.
When I started, that would have completely blown my mind. Of course, that was before smartphones and all of that. But that's just one simple everyday thing.
It really matters.
That's such a huge change over the years. everybody's transitioned to all your records being online.
Right,
that was
right.
a huge thing. Of course,
Definitely.
that's, you know, in Georgia, we started making that move probably 20 years ago.
Nice.
But it progressed. Even that, initially it was just your county website. You had your parcel data out there,
Yeah.
your owner information, that was it.
Right.
Right, it was just a static website
Definitely.
that updated it however often.
Definitely.
Now that has transitioned into tools that we use daily in the office connected to the back
awesome.
end of that website, right?
Yep.
We have user logins for the staff, and they have access to
cool.
tools and layers that the public
Right, right.
doesn't. So just something that simple has been a
Big game changer.
huge change.
That's cool.
And how CAMA systems work, getting back to the CAMA system, WinGap in
Right.
Georgia used to be Fox Pro based, right?
Nice.
You ever
Yeah,
dealt with
yeah,
Fox
oh,
Pro?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Right, and then it transitioned in somewhere around 2010 to SQL, and everybody that knew all this Fox Pro syntax, it went completely out the window, right?
Yep.
Just overnight.
Yep.
You throw that away because SQL is totally different.
Yep.
They have almost nothing in common.
Right.
Now, of course, SQL is leaps and bounds above what Fox Pro was, and
Right.
the syntax all makes a whole lot more sense. But
Definitely.
again, it just overnight, 20 years of,
Yes.
of experience using this particular querying method was gone.
Gone.
Right.
Yep.
So I think in Georgia, that's probably the most drastic.
Yeah.
But also just all these tools that are available now, mobile assessing software.
Yeah.
You know, our guys, we go out with the iPad.
Nice.
You know, your maps are
Slip
loaded
right
there.
up. Yep.
Your parcels are in there. You make your changes. It syncs through the cloud.
That's nice.
And by the time you're back in the office, that parcel
go.
is updated. You've sketched on the iPad. You've
Nice.
taken your photographs.
Yep.
Again, there's another thing about antiquated technology. We used to think we go out with our digital
Right.
camera, we take our pictures,
Yep.
you write down your file numbers,
Right.
you come back into the office, open up your CAMA system, and you
Get in there.
and you upload those photos one at a time.
Good Lordy.
If you had somebody out in the field for a week,
Yeah.
It-
That's a heck of a
it's going to take them a week to
get
upload
it in there.
photos.
Yep.
And I can remember thinking, man, these digital cameras is changing everything.
Right.
And now that is completely antiquated because,
Wow.
like I say, we go out, we've got the iPad, we take our pictures, it
Yep.
automatically attaches to the parcel. So a week's worth of busy work back in the office is completely gone
No.
now, right? I can
Super cool.
keep people out in the field reviewing property,
Right.
instead of tied up
Just sitting there.
clicking through
uploading
each parcel,
stuff.
attaching
Yeah.
a picture. Yeah, right. So that's a major change as
Super
well.
amazing. Getting better.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's cool.
And looking at, your AI presentation this morning,
Right.
is just a complete separate tool that we don't know how far it's going to go, right?
Right.
We can't
Yeah.
imagine 10 years down the road how good it's going to be,
Right.
And how is it going to make our lives so much easier?
Exactly.
Probably. I don't see how it couldn't. Right now,
Right.
right now I'm a very rudimentary user. I'm
Yeah.
on ChatGPT quite a bit.
That's awesome.
If I want to, I'll give you an example tying back to HB 581.
Right.
Wanted to have a write-up, a handout for taxpayers
Right,
coming
right.
in this year because it was the first
Yeah.
year of it that's going to explain it to them in very simple, understandable layman terms because
Right.
we in the assessment industry are so guilty of using our acronyms and using our
right,
jargon. So it's hard to, like we were talking earlier,
Yes.
talking about coefficients of dispersion and all that.
Exactly.
It's hard to put that language down. So ChatGPT wrote up a very simple set of bullet
Right.
points. Ended up being,
That's awesome.
published on the county website, county social media, all that. So
Yeah.
it's a great tool just to, it's a language model, right?
Language
So,
model. Yeah, exactly.
so-
And all these tools, I think you're right, and just understanding the limitation, where they're strong, where they're weak, and how to use them, and
Yeah.
it's going to be kind of one of the big skills.
It's something you touched on. I kind of got a chuckle out of because I sort of felt for the guy, the attorney.
Yeah, I know he did that, right?
The attorney who had a bunch of
Throwing
fake
that out
case
there.
law.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's similar, not as drastic, of course, but when I was writing up this HB 581
Yes.
speaking points, it had a couple of sentences that were completely wrong.
That is wrong.
Totally
It's
wrong.
not correct. Yep.
No idea where it picked that up.
Yeah, this is wild.
Because I couldn't find anything
Right,
published.
right.
My only guess was maybe a copy of a social
Something,
media post that was some
somewhere
bad
in it,
information. But when I told it, I said, hey, this is wrong. That's not how it works.
Right.
It immediately corrected
you're right.
it. And the second time, it spit out a great document.
Exactly.
But it's just very interesting, like say, knowing the limitations.
Knowing the limitations, and humans are still super important. and will be for a long
Exactly,
time.
and you've got to read back through that document and make sure it's not something crazy.
Yes.
Another podcast I listened to, I guess about a year ago, talking about ChatGPT, and specifically when 4 came out.
Right.
One of the developers said you've got to think about it as the smartest and dumbest person you've ever
Yes,
spoken
exactly,
to in
exactly.
one. Right.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right framing, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I think, hard for a lot of people to get their minds around.
It
takes
really
some
is.
time, you know,
Yeah.
because they're amazing, but they do have limitations.
Yeah, they do.
Like all of us,
Absolutely.
you know?
Yeah, for sure.
It's super cool. Last big thing I want to touch on. So we were talking about the interstate highway system.
Yes, right.
A little bit early before the call. I do think it's amazing, and we're talking generally about this degradation of a lot of community within this country. And you brought up the interstate highway system as an interesting thing where it's this changed a lot, like where downtowns get de-emphasized. And it's super interesting to me because we were talking earlier in the presentation about the Henry George's whole movement around the cities, the rent it's so expensive.
Right.
Real estate is super expensive. And it's interesting what actually made the Georges movement kind of go away within American society was the fact we actually built the suburbs out.
Yeah, built the suburbs.
So you can actually remove all this urban land rent pressure so you can move out.
Right.
But then you all live in the suburbs and you're not in the same kind of community.
Yeah, the community lost a lot. And getting back to you and I both being history nerds here, I think I mentioned earlier, I believe for all the good the interstate highway system did, it definitely took a lot away from community.
Yes.
Because like I said earlier, it became possible to drive an hour to work.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Where when it was back in the day with
You had to be
rural
around.
country roads.
Yep.
That drive would have taken 3 or 4 hours,
Exactly,
and nobody's going to commute
Nobody
like
can do
that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think luckily we're seeing some resurgence in our downtown areas. I know specifically in my community we are, but that's because of very deliberate investment, very specific type of businesses, boutique shops, restaurants. We mentioned craft breweries. That's all common now in downtown areas. So I'm hoping we swing the pendulum back the other way and maybe start developing more of a sense of community.
Exactly.
Of course, you've got social media and everything out there that further complicates it. But
exactly.
But like I say, I'm hopeful we start moving back in that direction.
Definitely. I know you're absolutely right. And I think the weave connects all the way back to the property taxes. I think people don't realize how important. If you look at your vacant land ratios, if your ratio on vacant land is low, and let's say it's lower than your improved property, which is often the case, it's hard to appraise. Vacant land market, it's not super efficient.
Exactly.
It's hard to get good data on this stuff, how improved it actually is.
Right.
But if your ratio is low, we see these weird effects within communities where, if your ratio is low, so your carrying costs for just holding that parcel are low. So let's you say your town, it's you want to redevelop, you want to fill in with more density, so you can have people that are closer.
Yeah.
But it's actually these people are just waiting. You can buy a vacant lot and just kind of sit on it and say, well, it's really cheap to hold, and so I'm not going to develop it. I'm just going to bet that everybody else is going to build up, and eventually I'm going to sell it for this really huge premium.
Eventually you're going to be forced to sell because it's so valuable.
It's so valuable. Exactly. And I worry though that it ends up trapping a lot of our communities. Particularly you think about Detroit is the craziest case of this.
Yeah.
Where it's $500 to get a parcel out of the vacant land bank. You don't have to pay any carrying cost on it.
Right.
And so everyone's just like, well, let's all just bet that Detroit will come back one day.
Yeah,
but it
right.
never comes back because everyone's just holding it.
Yeah.
So I think that's just like maybe an important message. Like, look at your vacant ratios. Like, what does that look like? How are you doing? Because things like that, really, really small things, actually have this very real impact in the real world.
Absolutely. That's something we took a major undertaking on this year in my office.
That's
was
awesome.
rural land
Absolutely.
valuation. Now, not all of it's vacant, but the majority
Right. Yeah,
of it is,
yes.
right? And in Georgia, like most states, land
Right.
is categorized into rural or urban,
Exactly.
and then of course use. But,
Right.
but we focused on rural, and there's very specific model you're supposed to follow.
Right.
So we revamped all that, brought it into compliance with state guidelines.
That's cool.
So at least we've got values
In line.
closer in
Right.
line.
The closer market.
Right.
The closer market. Yeah.
We still have some.
It's never perfect. It's
We
just
have
closer.
some insane sales. Like
Yeah.
you say, you'll have some vacant
What's
land
going
sales that just blow your mind.
It don't make sense.
Yeah.
It's like, it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do wonder if a lot of that's like out-of-state buyers, like where, they come in and it's like, a vacant land parcel, there's a jurisdiction in Kentucky we work with, side by side, one sold for like 10K, they're sold for 20K. Now that's twice as much.
Yeah.
But, California out-of-state buyers like, well, $20,000 for a piece of land.
It's
I
nothing.
Not even think about it.
Yeah,
It's just like,
nothing.
what? Like,
I know. I know an exact example of that. A 5-acre tract that an out-of-state buyer
Yeah.
is looking at for $50,000 an acre. That's an insane
amount.
Insane
for
amount
us
for
and-
us, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
There's nothing. Not to say there's no $50,000 an acre
Right.
parcels.
But
There are.
that's pretty like.
But
yeah.
where this is located, it's way out of line.
Way
But
out of
again, it's an out-of-state buyer that $50,000 an acre sounds
whatever.
sounds like $500 an acre
Yes,
does, right?
Sounds like
It's
a
just
deal.
nothing.
Yeah. And so I did these market distortions. People have been moving around.
Yeah, that definitely affects it.
Leads to weird stuff. Cool. Well, Ashley, last big question. What advice do you have? Let's say there's somebody young. They're like 21. They're just in the office, just like you, just coming in. What advice would you give them?
Man, the biggest advice that takes being in the assessment industry
Right.
from a job,
Yeah.
just a job. I'm going clocking in, clocking
Definitely.
out every day.
Yeah.
I'm a cog in the wheel. It takes it from that to a career.
Yeah.
Is your network, man. Get involved with your local, your state association if
Definitely.
you've got one, your IAAO chapter if you've got one. Get out there and build those networks.
Right.
I'm always amazed, and I talk about this a lot, at how willing to help colleagues people in the assessment industry are. And I can remember very, very early in my days as a chief appraiser, a hot topic in this community came up about mineral rights.
Right.
Mineral rights.
Oh, yeah, of
Now,
all things, yeah.
I knew less than zero
Right. What are we
about
talking about
mineral
here? Yeah,
rights.
exactly.
But I knew a guy who did,
That's
right?
awesome.
There's a jurisdiction in North Georgia. It's Pickens County. It's the marble capital of the world, maybe.
Right,
I don't know,
right,
at
yeah,
least
yeah.
of the United
Yeah.
States. And so mineral rights are a huge thing there.
Right.
And so I called up a gentleman named Roy Dobbs, and he told me everything I needed to know about mineral rights. And it's some of my perceptions about it were totally wrong.
Right.
And he's like, no, think about it this way.
Yeah,
I was,
that's right.
okay, so anyway, use that example just to say, man, get out there and network. Another piece of advice: get every piece of education that your jurisdiction will pay for.
That's good.
I tell young people, like, hey, if leadership calls you at midnight
Yes.
and says, hey, the person going to this class tomorrow got sick, do you want to go? Pack your bags and go.
Yes.
Go to everything. Pick up every piece of knowledge you
Absolutely.
can. It's building your skills, it's building your resume. Networking and education, that's truly what it's all about. And again, takes it from just being a mundane, I've got to get up, go to work, clock in, clock out, to a real career.
You're exactly right.
And something you can be proud of.
That's good. And there's another question here, where you're saying something you maybe haven't explicitly mentioned, but it's in the vein. It's like the best compliment I've ever gotten to start this company. I was in an assessor's office, this happened a couple weeks ago, and getting done with the presentation, and he's just like, man, I like you, and I like you because you care about this stuff.
Yeah, care about it.
You care about the
You
work.
care about it.
And it's like, seems like a lost art, though. It's like people, you need to understand, like, yeah, you may not think this is important. This stuff is actually very, very important.
It's very important. Like we've discussed so many times here during this podcast, is the far-reaching effects.
You have no idea. You have no idea how much this matters.
Right.
Yes.
And I think as leadership, that's what you've got to explain to your team.
Right.
This is why it matters.
This is why it matters. Exactly.
It might on the surface seem mundane, but this is why it matters.
This actually really matters.
Going back to my example of sales qualification.
Yes.
Very simple, rudimentary task that we've all done, but it's vastly important.
Exactly. It's vastly important.
You've got to get across to your team why that is so important.
Like it really matters. I mean, like you're dealing with the distribution of wealth, and it's like this really what people are going to pay. Like this is a big deal, and even like at the smallest level, it's like I love this phrase. You know, when I was young, I was working this like job like in high school, and I'm like, man, I don't like this, you know. And a mentor of mine said, you know, Will, you should always remember it's all preparation for the big show.
Yeah, right.
You know,
right.
You really shouldn't forget, like, you know, you think you're just going to turn on being good and like working hard, like, you know, like no, like that's fake. So it's like you really should always think, like, even at the lowest level, it's like, you should always try really hard.
Exactly. Like you say, it's you're affecting wealth, you're affecting people's money.
Definitely.
Their wallet, their pocketbook,
exactly.
Right? So you've got to take it very
You have a duty
serious.
to do your job.
Yeah, exactly. Do it correctly.
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, Ashley, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you taking the time
Absolutely.
today.
It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Where can people find you if people want to reach out?
So GAAO.org, GAAO.org. If you ever want to email me, Ashley at GAAO.org, excuse me. The phone number that's on our website, that is my cell phone.
Awesome.
So reach out anytime. I'd love to talk to you.
Cool deal.
No matter where you're from, whatever questions you've got.
Absolutely.
You can find me easily. We are also on Facebook. We have a private group, but
cool deal.
But you can message us, and
awesome.
If you're a member of the assessment industry, we'd love to have you on there as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ashley. Appreciate
Thank you.
It.
Been a pleasure.
Thanks, man. That was great.
That was good. Good.